What's the worst case you've seen of someone trying to play the victim when it was all their own fault? I was in line in my car to enter an amusement park. All of a sudden the car in front of me threw on their reverse lights and backed into me hard. I got out and was talking to the driver, a 17-year-old girl, about what I needed, her driver license and insurance info. She kept trying to delay giving me the info because she wanted to call her parents first. Fine. No problem. She calls her dad, and as they were talking she calms down and her face lights up. She turns to me and says loudly and in a snarky tone while holding the phone towards me to get my reaction, "Did I hit you? Or did you hit me?" Because before I backed up, I checked my mirror and my passenger checked hers and you weren't there, and then all of a sudden we felt a hit. I replied, "Are you implying I rear-ended you?" "I'm not sure, but I think you might have." I point to my car. "Do you see that little thing beside my rear view mirror? That's a dash cam and it's been recording since I left my house and is currently recording our conversation. Now, if you want to go this route, we can. But the police are going to be notified." Now she starts crying and says on the phone, "No dad. He has a dashcam and it's recording everything." Then come the waterworks. She starts trying to get me to talk to her dad, that he will take care of it, etc. Finally I got the info out of her and had to get the front end of my car fixed. TLDR, a dashcam saved my ass. Get one. Edit: since I was called out for posting a fake story, here is a link to the accident. Right around 2:05 you can see her say it's not my fault. Okay. Also, I make a brief appearance. My comment was, "Oh well. Isn't this just ducking great?" The camera records in 3-minute intervals and I'd have to dig for the part where I point out the dashcam. Yow to be. My cat plays with the closet door and sometimes shuts himself in. Then I get an angry cat yowling to get let out and acts like I'm the one that locked him in there. When I was teaching, I had a student I adored who had some behavior problems. I did everything I could to support him. One day, we were taking a test and he was talking. I reminded him several times that talking during a test is not allowed, and I would have him go in the hallway if he continued. He continued talking, so I told him to go into the hall. He called me autistic on his way out, his favorite insult, and so I wrote him a referral. I called his parents and they didn't answer. So I sent an email explaining what happened, that he got a referral, and that I hope we can work together to help him manage his reactions. His mother responded saying that my behavior is unacceptable and that she is done speaking with me and I will hear from her lawyer. She went all the way up to the district level to complain about me, telling all sorts of lies and making me look like a horrible person. I don't teach anymore. My friend's sister. She doesn't feed her kids nor send the oldest one, 7, to school. Her neighbors reported her to CPS. And now she's posting statuses about how cruel people are for separating a mother and her kids. I quit my job and set up my own competitive business with my ex-employer after he failed to pay me for 2 months, claiming non-payment from the clients. He had a massive go at me after I confronted him with receipts from the clients to show payment, and he accused me of making him look bad in front of his clients and that he didn't owe me the money because some people are bosses and some people are employees, hence why I quit the job and set up for myself, because last time I checked, slavery is illegal in the UK. I also warned a few of my ex-co-workers to be careful and not let him rack up debt with them because of what he did to me. They are nice people with young families and don't deserve to be taken advantage of, like he did to me. I take him to court to try to recoup the money he owed me for the work I completed, and the judge ruled in my favor for the full amount of just over £4,000. He then plays the victim card with everyone he knows and says that I made him and his family homeless despite the fact that he never paid me a penny of the money owed. £4,000 is like 5-6 months rent in a decent neighborhood in my city. Honestly blows my mind every time I think about it. Short story, the dude stole over £4,000 from me. Never pays me back. Blames me for making his family homeless. Facebook drama from a few years ago. This girl was leaving a bar drunk, and she backed her car into the car of someone she was an acquaintance with while exiting the parking lot. Then the next day went off on him for telling the police he saw her do it, when he knew she was poor and could have just said he didn't see it and had his insurance pay. She kept digging a deeper hole and all the replies were like itch. Don't drive drunk. It was glorious. My crazy college girlfriend cheated on me and then blamed me for causing problems in our relationship by being obsessed with the truth as I figured out what had happened. I was in a crowded parking lot, driving around looking for a space. There was one car ahead of me. The car ahead of me stopped, so I stopped as well. I'm not sure why she stopped because there were no empty spaces and no one was pulling out. But whatever. Then, before I even had time to react, her reverse lights came on and she came flying backwards towards me. I didn't even have time to honk. She slammed into the front of my car, got out of her car, and started screaming that I hit her. When officers arrived, she was crying and shaking and complaining that her neck hurt, and cursing me for slamming into the back of her car. Thankfully, 2 people had been walking through the parking lot when this occurred and told the officer what really happened. Later, the driver of the car that hit me tried to tell her insurance company that I knew the witnesses and that's why they lied. I didn't know the witnesses, by the way. At any rate, if the witnesses hadn't stuck around to give statements, I'd have been screwed. My best friend's ex-girlfriend. Basically her ex was kicked out of her parents' house when she told them she was a les. She moved in with my best friend since they were dating at the time. At first she told my GF that she was too depressed to find a job. My best friend was okay with that even if it meant she'd have to work more, which she did. She even found a second part-time job for the next 6 months. Whenever my best friend asked her if she found a job, she'd always get the "I'm too depressed" response. Eventually my best friend finds out her girlfriend cheated on her. Her excuse for cheating was, "You're always at work and never have time for me. I need someone who will be there for me." My best friend kicks her out and then her ex blames her for having to move back in with her parents. The kicker: turns out her parents never really kicked her out. She was just tired of them telling her to get a job. My sister's friend was beaten up by her boyfriend and stayed the night downstairs of our house with her 3 kids. Next day he comes around, starts cursing her out, saying she stole his kids, grabs the baby and start walking away with him. She chases him trying to get the baby back and he punches her several times in the face. My brother intervenes and separated them. This asshole leaves and brings back the cops to arrest my brother for assault. Sometimes my children ask me why they've met my mother but never met my father. I tell them he died a long time ago when I was a kid. In reality, my dad used to be an abusive drunk, and my mother had to kick him out because he used to beat on us kids. We used to spend weekends at his new house, but around the time I turned 10 he told my mother to stop dropping us off, and gave her a shoebox full of all the pictures he had of us. We tried calling him on holidays every now and again, but he finally just told us to stop contacting him altogether. Last year my mother passed away, and he decided to reach out to me and expressed he had changed and wanted to make things up to me. I told him it was okay. I filled him in on how I was doing in life and sent him pictures of my children, but I expressed I was already a man and don't need a father anymore. But he was forgiven for the 20-year absence. He then proceeded to tell me that I'm horrible for pushing him away and abandoning him, that he was dying and just wanted to fix things. So I just explained to him, it's already forgiven, but he abandoned me and I had no time for his foolishness. I wish things would have been different, but he's too much of a bad influence to allow in my children's lives. This guy got upset saying we were always talking about him behind his back. He would creep up to the door in our apartment and stand there listening to our conversations. Of course we would talk about him. He owed 2 of us over $600 and refused to pay it. And then we were the bad people because we would talk about it in our own apartment, not knowing he is creeping around the door. My ex-wife loves to do this. She had an affair, Left me and our kid for the guy. Got a DWI and the car I co-signed for was repossessed. Every time I hear from her I get to listen to her complain about how she has to walk to work and how she has to borrow lunch money because child support took $129 out of her check and our son never calls her and she hasn't seen him in over a year. Itch. Shut the duck up. Edit. Wasn't expecting such a huge response. Without further ado, I present the abridged version of the backstory. My Bill. Wife's brother. Everything is terrible in his life because everyone conspires to be mean to him. All his drug problems are other people's fault. The government never should have taken his kid from him. Because he's a good father. When his disabled mother got custody of his kid and then let him move in with them, she made up all those stories about him hitting her and the kid. When the government, both APS and CPS, told us we had to protect them from him. We had no right to take his kid, that he hadn't had custody of 4 years. He lives off disability for back problems he's had since getting a beat down for running his mouth at the wrong people, despite the fact his doctors tell him he doesn't need a wheelchair and can work. It's our fault he can't pay his bills. Even though he's still living in his mother's house rent-free, and that surely has nothing to do with the fact that he blows his disability check on Drew Gus and junk food as soon as he gets it. In his mind, we abandoned him to die and are horrible people for not letting him live with us, despite the fact that the government literally put his mother and kid in our care to keep them safe from him. He came up with a scheme where he called 911 to be taken to the local hospital. When he got there he told them he was dying because he was wheelchair bound and abandoned in a squalid house. The house became squalid after the mother and kid were removed because he refused to clean and had a dog he never let outside. He actually got Adult Protective Services to call us and tell us we had to take care of him and fix up his house. By the way, we live 250 miles away in a different state. We explained the history and gave them the names of the caseworkers for his mother and son, who know him well. APS confirmed what we told them. When APS told him we didn't agree to let him live with us, he demanded they file a court order to force us to allow him to live in our home. APS told him that wasn't actually a thing that could happen, so he started screaming profanities at everyone in the hospital. She called us from the hospital. We heard him screaming when the doctors told him. Again, he didn't need a wheelchair, he screamed at them. They discharged him, but he refused to leave on his own. So they sent him home in an ambulance. He refused to get out. So they wound up driving him back to the hospital and leaving him on a gurney in the ER waiting room. After 8 hours when he still refused to leave they had security drag him out and dump him in the parking lot. A few weeks later he's calling us begging us to pay his bills and goes off again on how we had no right to take his kid from him. And we're terrible people because we refuse to acknowledge what a good father he is. He lives in the rural south. Do you know what it takes for CPS to take your kid in a poor county in the south? We're talking immediate danger to life. Not only did they do that, and then a judge permanently took away his custody, but then they came back and said the kid and his mother weren't safe in the same house as him. And we stole his kid. I raised my kids. They've graduated and are adults. I have zero desire to raise another kid, let alone one who has significant emotional issues from being abused. But guess what? I am. Because I'm not a total piece of shit. And I can't turn my back on them. But in my brother-in-law's eyes, this is all a vast conspiracy to spite him. During a Sunday liturgy, I gave the priest the proper intonation for the Gloria in Excelsis. But he started chanting the Sanctus instead, which comes much later in the Mass. No one knew how, or if, to respond. So the place fell silent. Afterward, the priest blamed me, the organist, for giving him the wrong intonation instead of simply admitting that he wasn't infallible and had made a simple mistake. My ex-GF tried to get me arrested for assault and rape. Turns out, it was her boyfriend that she cheated on me with who did it to her. She wanted money so she blamed me. Cheaters on our aunt or are off my chest. I'm so torn between these two men. Woe is me. Happens repeatedly. One guy victimized himself for catfishing. claimed it was totally harmless. I believe he was just trying to prove to himself that he isn't a terrible person. My ex cheated on me and I left him. He said he cheated because he felt like he couldn't please me in bed and it made him insecure. Mayo. Maybe my ex-wife. Pretty standard stuff. As boyfriend and girlfriend we had all kinds of kinky sex. Oral. Now. Strap on. Roleplay. etc. I've never really been a huge fan of vanilla sex. Anyway. We get married. And as time goes on, she starts dropping all of the fun activities and only wants pretty basic sex. Nothing wrong with that. Just wasn't what I was into. So our sex life plummeted, but I was okay with that. She really wasn't. And eventually wanted an open marriage. I consented. I'll spare the details, but she found someone fast. Forbid me from sleeping with someone when I finally found them because she wasn't ready for it. And when this all came to a head and we separated, she went around blaming for forcing her to have sex with someone else. My mom ruined my courthouse wedding. Called me selfish and made fun of my shoes on my wedding day. And made me swear to her that I wouldn't tell our family I was getting married until we had a big ceremony. Then proceeded to go behind my back and tell people anyway. She is now genuinely surprised that I am upset and going around crying to all my aunts and uncles about how her only daughter will not speak to her. Does anyone think that the story of Brock Turner might fit in well to this category? This girl accused a teacher, who had been there for over 40 years, of sexual assault right before her entrance exam. It was a really good private school, so you needed to take a test to be considered for admission. The accusations were investigated and were found completely unfounded almost immediately. I don't know what this girl was thinking. Like maybe she thought it was a way for her to get some leverage and improve her chances of getting in or something. On top of that, the actions of the school were even worse. They kept him in the dark for 2 months after the investigation was completed and were refusing to allow him back because of their insurance. Then a campaign was launched by a bunch of alums and he finally got back to teaching. Until his death a few years ago. He was a great guy too. I had him for a political theory class and he was really nice. He and his wife, aside from having children of their own, took in foster kids all the time and he did a lot of other volunteer work. Sucks he had to go through all of that because some teenage girl lied. My 50-something-year-old mom's very frequent non-sober calls and hysterics about how her life is ruined. This was after she turned our lives upside down with her alcoholism and drug abuse throughout our childhood. Went to rehab 5 times and relapsed every time. Was given literal countless chances by my dad and family to start fresh, including amazing job and housing opportunities. Nearly bankrupted my dad. Forced him to move and raise 6 children on his own. And eventually lost relationships with all of her family and children except me. Up until 2 years ago when I received a call that she ducked up again. Got herself kicked out of her free housing arrangement and lost her job before it even started. Forcing me to go pick her up on the side of the road and crash at my apartment for the night. I remember when I was scrambling to hide all of the alcohol and pills in my place before getting her. Then picking her up and her crying that my dad was still ignoring her and wouldn't give her money anymore. It really hit me that I'd finally had enough. Victimizers. Am I right, guys?